Time for another round of Soccer's in Session here on the SDH Network. And for this one, we head down to Statesboro. 2024 season starting in earnest on both the men's and women's sides. And for that, we go down and visit and find out what life is like in the borough, catch up with both head coaches, and get a preview of the season. Here's our look at what's going on in Statesboro with Georgia Southern here in 2024. Time for an odd man rush here on the SDH Network as Soccer's in session. And for this, we go to Georgia Southern, check in on the men's and women's programs down in the borough here with head coach Lee Squires, head coach Chris Adams. Guys, thanks for dropping by for a 2v1.
Thanks for having us.
All right. So since we believe in chivalry here on the SDH Network, we'll go women's program first. So, Chris, let me ask you this. Biggest lesson that you brought forward from the 23 season that you think will help you out in the 24 season is what you think?
Yeah, it's a tough question. Got a new bunch, really. Lost 9 players, 5 starters. So really young right now. So we're kind of having to start over a little bit, but just making sure that team chemistry and culture is good, from the start. So focusing more on chemistry and the off the field stuff. Got a little bit of work to do after opening weekend with the on-field stuff. So just trying to focus on a team standard and team chemistry right now would be my answer.
Lee, what about on your end?
I think for us, it's year 2 of this sort of project we have, and just taking a lot of the lessons from year 1. We, as a coaching staff and as a group of players, a lot of us were new to not only the Sunbelt Conference and the competitive nature of it, but Division I as a whole. My first experience as a Division I head coach, and I think we've got a lot more knowledge going into year 2, a little bit more consistency with returning guys, and a second layer of recruitment. So the team is starting to form its identity now, and hopefully we see more of that progress in the next few months.
So Chris, on the women's side, you got to go to Honolulu. That's never a bad thing. And catching up with Hawaii and Pepperdine. And I know that things are new and everything, but what was it like to be able to take a program out to an exciting environment, something that probably hasn't been done in quite some time? What was it like to have that kind of an experience to start a season off?
Yeah, it was a great start, playing in Paradise. Against 2 very good teams. First you're playing against the home side in Hawaii with a, not going to say a hostile environment, but a good home crowd. So that was, a neat experience. And then playing a very good Pepperdine team. Luckily we went early enough to be able to witness, some of the touristy stuff. So we were able to take in a luau, able to eat at Duke's and do some of the iconic spots. We had Rainbow Drive-In the first day. So, yeah, I think for a lot of our players, it's a once-in-a-lifetime type trip, and not only for our players but our staff. And I think just being together on the road for a week will go a long way, and just sort of getting to know each other and know what makes people tick. So, yeah, it was very exciting. Everything went well except the results on the field.
And then, Lee, you've had the chance to have a couple of exhibitions. You had one against Georgia Southwestern there at Tormenta Stadium. You walk across the parkway and you get to have one there at Tormenta Stadium. And then you go down to Tampa to take on USF. What's the early returns from those 2 exhibition matches for you?
A lot of positives. That the first one was barely a week into preseason, so we managed to play 2 different 11s in each half of the game. Our attacking players each contributed to the 3 goals that we scored, kept a clean sheet, which is always good confidence. And I think 24 guys saw the field. So that was certainly an upgrade on a training session against ourselves and going against kind of the unpredictability of a team we couldn't scout beforehand. And then the USF trip was not as fancy as Hawaii, but a good location to go down to Tampa to play against a top program. Big field, humid conditions, against a team that can move the ball well and have 2 strikers that can really hurt you. So I thought in that game we outshot them. Maybe it was outpossessed a little bit, but certainly created the bulk of the good chances. gifted them a goal, which a young player will learn from, but had the resilience to respond within 6 or 7 minutes, and really give a good account of ourselves to kind of increase the belief that we can go toe to toe with the top program throughout the Southeast. So yeah, a lot of different things learned in both games, but equally beneficial, and looking forward to this opening week.
And Chris, one of the things that you mentioned is it's a young side. There's a lot of freshmen and sophomores on that roster. When it comes to the integration with them and the players that are returning and making sure that everyone's on the same page, how much of a challenge is that with all of these young faces and those that are there with you? How much of a challenge is it to make sure that everybody is on the same page when you get to full song and when you get to conference play?
Yeah, I mean, I think these non-conference games is critical. Your best lineup. You have your substitution patterns down. With only one exhibition this year, I think we're still trying to figure some things out, and so it's really a good issue where over time we're a lot deeper than we've been in the past, which creates competition at every position. I think it's just figuring out those pairings of who works best with each other, which takes a little bit of time, and so, we want to give ourselves a little bit of grace to figure out what those matchups need to be. But I also think for the long haul, having a lot of people that can step on and do a job should serve us well by the time we get towards the latter part of the season and into the conference tournament, of having so many people with experience and obviously having all of those decisions sort of sorted out. But the quality depth should pay dividends later on in the season. It's just figuring out right now with so many new players, those pairings is the biggest challenge.
And, Lee, we talk about youth, and you look at a roster for Georgia Southern coming into the season, there's a lot of FRs and there's a lot of SOs that are there that are a part of your makeup. And there's also a heavy international contingent. I would think adds another element to making sure everyone can blend and that everyone's on the same page with relationships both on and off the field. How much of a challenge is that?
For sure. I think, the international flavor, I think we're about 33% of the roster is from overseas. So naturally there's some challenges with them coming over to the Southeast, getting used to, our guys from Denmark have not seen heat and humidity like this, for example. Even the British guys, it's not raining as much. So there's some things to get used to there, but we do a lot of research on the front end before we recruit them to make sure that regardless of where they're from, they're good characters, they're going to work hard, they're going to be good teammates, they're going to hopefully develop into leaders to go along with their talent as well. And yeah, we've got a good international contingent, but we've also got a good core of Georgia and Southeast and Florida players in particular. So merging them together, regardless of where they're from, is if you've got good people, it makes your job as a coach a little bit easier. But it is a really so far tight knit group of guys. But we haven't picked an 11 yet for a competitive game, so we'll see if some challenges present themselves there once people start getting left out of squads. But it is a good group that regardless of their individual feelings towards playing time or not, that they're supporting each other. So far, so good.
Yeah, and Chris, Lee mentioned the Southeastern coefficient, for lack of a better way to phrase it. There's a lot of Georgia on the roster. There's some other Southeastern states there. What's it been like for you to see the sport grow to where you can stay at home and you notice talent that other schools, because they're outside the state of Georgia, may not necessarily know, but you get to see that talent from the high school level straight up, and you're like, okay, that's the kind of individual that I want here in Statesboro. What's it been like to see the talent pool grow here in the state of Georgia and in the Southeast over time?
Yeah, I think the Southeast is just a hotbed, for soccer, no pun intended. But, just to be able to get so many, good student athletes out of the state of Georgia. I mean, obviously the Hope Scholarship plays a big part in helping, scholarships go that much further, but also just having good students. And then, also the bordering states. I mean, we have some Florida kids, some Alabama kids, North Carolina, South Carolina. So all those bordering states, we have representatives out of all of those. And then really we just have 3 internationals. And so 3 English players to acclimate, to the heat, as Lee alluded. So that's a challenge for sure. Yeah, I mean, it is nice to just be, so close to Atlanta and people be able to, go away from college, but yet be close enough to where we get really good parental support, and really good fan following, because of that. So yeah, it's great. It's a great thing to be right here in the state of Georgia and have so many good players in your backyard.
Lee Squires and Chris Adams, the head coaches of the men's and women's programs at Georgia Southern, hanging out with us here as Soccer's in session here on the SDH Network. So, Lee, how does this work? You have folks that, that are that third of the roster. I mean, how do you recruit these days? Is it as simple as going and looking at huddle and video and doing virtual interviews? How does this recruiting process work when you're dealing with an ocean that separates you?
Yeah, it's obviously more of a challenge to get to South America or over to Europe or Africa or anywhere else in the world. But the world is getting a lot smaller these days. You can watch a game online or the replay of it, and it's almost like you're there in the stadium itself. But the step up into Division 1 for me from Division 2, the resources are more readily available. I was able to get over to Italy, Sweden, and Denmark in December on a 10-day trip, and really strengthen relationships with the recruiting agencies, if you like, that are sending these guys across, but also see firsthand those players in person, and get to see some of the things you may miss on video. But yeah, the world's definitely becoming a lot smaller. You can have, just like we are now, a pretty in-depth conversation without having to be in the same room. And it's similar, when you're identifying players, you start off with the highlight video, which is the best of what they have, and then as much as possible, you dive into the full games to see, how they respond to mistakes, or are they given direction on the field, even if you can't necessarily hear the communication, you can see it. So yeah, the world's a lot smaller now, which makes it easier. But as much as you can, you still want to get across and see firsthand, who you're potentially bringing into your program.
Chris, how different is recruiting from when you first started as a head coach to now? How much of a moonshot has it been from day one to where you are right now in Statesboro?
Yeah, I think, as Lee said, the resources definitely much more plentiful, which helps. The character piece is so important, that I agree with Lee. You got to get out there and meet these people firsthand and figure out what type of character they have as well. But yeah, when I first started out, the game really, it's grown exponentially now, and there's just so many more players to sift through and figure out which ones are just that right fit. So I think it's a lot more volume. And then 2, the more successful that we've been, in some ways it gets easier because more people want to play for you, but then your needs are so much more finite that finding that exact person that fits the needs of your team or group becomes a bigger challenge as well. So, definitely as I've climbed the ladder, starting at NAI, then D2, now D1, much more competitive as well. Just because you've identified them at this level doesn't mean you're going to be able to land them. And so, definitely got when you find that person, you definitely got to court them and throw everything at them and see if you can't, get that perfect fit for your program. But it's definitely changed dramatically, in my 28 years in college soccer.
All right, so time for the season preview stuff here. You guys have matches coming up with your respective teams in a couple days. Lee, we'll start with you. Coming up in a couple of days there in Statesboro, it's a matchup against Wofford on Thursday afternoon. For somebody that wanders into Tormenta Stadium and sees Georgia Southern play for the first time with you in charge, I guess this is the match game portion of the program. When things are going well for me out on the pitch, we are doing blank. offensively, defensively? How would you say when things are going well, style of play, things like that, when things are going well, blank is occurring for us?
3-0 up after 10 minutes would be a good start. But no, we want to, it's going to be 85, 90 degrees at kickoff, 5 p.m. Great facilities, gracious hosts, tough opposition. So for us, we want to start the game on the front foot, and that's trying to be aggressive and trying to implement our game plan as early as possible. And how much of the game can we control? Our possession is going to be important in, not giving the ball away cheaply because it's so hot. It's going to be, maybe a minute before you see it again. So can we circulate the ball? Can we, pin their outside backs back and really get into their half and try and execute our patterns of play? And then have a resilience and an organization defensively, be nice and compact and be difficult to break down. And then understand at this level that the games, are not often separated by more than a goal. So we have to pay special attention to set pieces for and against as well, because if things are kind of nip and tuck, then, a set piece can break the deadlock and open the game up. So in all phases of the game, offense, defense, and the transitions, plus the set pieces, we're going to have to be really on point because there's no easy games at this level.
And then after that match is completed, Chris, it's your turn going up against Kennesaw State. So when the Eagles are going up against Hootie Who, when folks wander into the door and they're looking at the second match of the doubleheader, how would you personify when things are going well? What's happening out there for you?
Yeah, I think we're predicated on tempo. We like to play fast, get to goal as quickly as possible, not necessarily direct, but just in the fewest number of passes possible. We're athletic, so we like to press. So maybe pressing, winning the ball a bit higher up the field to create more scoring chances. And then you got to be organized defensively. I mean, we've prided ourselves a lot with a new back four on communication. So I think communication and organization play a critical part as well. And then as a testament in our first game of Hawaii, both goals came off set pieces. That's such an important part of the game. Just making sure we pride ourselves on set pieces and make them count for us. And hopefully don't give up too many, rather give up throw-ins than corners and not create fouls in our own, defensive third to give them opportunities on set pieces. So just kind of organize and discipline defensively, not so cautious on the attack, taking risk, running at players, trying to get to goal as frequently as possible. And then pressing and winning it high up the field would be a good day for us.
Okay, so then Lee, when folks wander in and they're watching, if they had their streaming device in front of them and they were watching on television, as I hold up my phone, the TV starts, you get the open live from Tormenta Stadium, it's at Georgia Southern Soccer, and then you and I are in the booth. We're calling the game. If I toss to you and say, okay, who are the players in the Lee Squires spot shadow that folks need to be paying attention to in this matchup, who will folks instantly gravitate toward when it comes to your group there in that matchup coming up on Thursday?
I mean, naturally, I think everybody's attention drifts towards the attacking players who are, athletic and exciting and can beat people and get shots off and, really be entertaining to watch. So we've got two young freshmen out wide who have been with us since the spring who are so far maybe ahead of where they maybe should be at this point. We have a recognized number 9 in Ryan Holmes as a pure goal scorer. We have runners from midfield. But also we got a bit of experience now. The centre-back partnership is the same potentially as last year, which, they played 17 games together. So we have a 6th-year senior and captain in Alistair Danjan. We have a junior captain and goalkeeper in Nate Martinez. So there's a little bit more continuity and maybe a bit more recognizable guys because they're here for a 2nd or a 3rd year now. So but I think all over the pitch, it's a good balance and certainly less sort of square pegs in round holes than a year ago. So, I think we're going to be exciting to watch. I think we're going to be a team that Eagle Nation can be proud of. And hopefully we get off to a good start.
All right, so Chris, what about for you on your end with Kennesaw State coming to town? We're in the booth. We're calling the game. I toss to you. Who are the folks that folks will gravitate toward for them as they're watching the game down there at Tormenta Stadium?
Yeah, I mean, Smith Cathy, I think, is somebody you notice right away. I think for a lot of different reasons. One is just her versatility, can play many different places. I think Carly Borgelt and Ansley Crenshaw, are critical components there in the midfield. And then right now the back four is probably not quite solidified, but Kendall Wilson has done a really good job back there for us, organizing. And then having played 2 games, we've played each keeper once. So maybe figuring that matchup as well. But I think the midfield is probably the strength of our group this year. And then, Smith Cathy's ability to score goals, and Bree Conley should also find the back of the net, fairly frequently as well. So those are probably the players to watch at this point.
Gentlemen, it's great to catch up with you as soccer's in session there in Statesboro with Georgia Southern men's head coach Lee Squires, women's head coach Chris Adams. Good luck coming up here in the midweek. We'll be keeping an eye on you this season. Thanks for dropping by for a 2v1. Great to see you, and have a great season. We'll catch up with you soon, my friends.
Thanks so much.
That is your look at Georgia Southern soccer as the season is getting underway. Remember, Thursday afternoon, 5 and 7, a doubleheader in Statesboro over at Tormenta Stadium. Starts off at 5 o'clock on the men's side. Wofford comes to town. The Terriers come to visit. And then after that matchup, slated for 7 o'clock or so, it'll be Kennesaw State visiting Georgia Southern. So that is another go-round of Soccer's in Session here on the SDH Network. Keep an eye out on all of our social media platforms for all of the interviews and all of the previews that we have, because the state of Georgia, when it comes to the collegiate ranks, which is where we are right now. When we get to the high school ranks, we'll talk a lot of high school. When we are in the collegiate ranks, there's a lot of teams to talk about, and we're going to talk about them here on the SDH Network. So thanks for dropping by here on SDH. Play it safe, everybody. Enjoy the games. Enjoy your college ranks, and enjoy the collegiate games here so far here in the 2024 season. Play it safe, everybody. We'll see you next time.